watching NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati. Now, you heard the minutiae and the details of the budget all through the day. I'm going to try to now draw to you the perspective which tells us whence we came, whither we go, because that sight, that vision is as important as the devil in the detail about 1% here and 1 lakh crores here and 1,000 crores here. All of that is important. So here's a figure for you. It's a figure you haven't heard today. It's a figure worth digesting. Ladies and gentlemen, in just the top 10 programs and schemes of the union government in the past 8 or 9 years, just the top 10, okay? There have been 266 crore, 2.66 billion touch points, 266 crore beneficiaries. Think about it. If you think about 4 people a family and about 30 crore odd families in India, this means that on an average, every single family, on an average, would have gotten 8 touch points or the benefit of 8 schemes. Now, if you and I are in the privileged community of not requiring to benefit from the schemes, in fact, happily giving up our subsidy, LPG subsidy, for it to be distributed elsewhere, that gets further concentrated. So there are families in this country now who would have received a house, they would have gotten a toilet, they would have gotten their gas connection, they would have gotten their water connection, they would have gotten their Ayushman Bharat card, maybe they got accident insurance, they got it all together. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this quintessentially, you can argue, what more can you do? That's it, no? Election done and dusted. No, not really. Just because people are beneficiaries of schemes does not mean that they want to, intend to vote for you. There are times when you grow up with siblings and have property disputes. There are times when mothers and children have falling outs. These things happen. There are times teachers who have taught you all your lives, you disagree with. There are times you leave work even though you've been paid well. So, good deeds need not necessarily guarantee electoral victory. But the question then is, with the scale of the touch points, what does that mean? Now, let's get a multitude of opinion. Joining us on the broadcast is Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Garden, joining us also. P.K. Nambiar is with us. Tehseen Poonawala is with us as well. And Tanvi Purti on the broadcast. Okay, Abhijit, let me start with you, and then I'll have a conversation with Tehseen as well. So the mathematics is telling us that, Abhijit, as I've just mentioned, just the top 10 schemes. And let's look at the top 10 schemes. They're all familiar to us now, what they actually mean, what they stand for. So we are talking about Mudra Loan, Ayushman Bharat, Awas Yojana, Ujjwala Yojana, Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, PM Kisan Yojana, Swat Bharat, which is basically the toilets, and Jan Dhan. That's 266 crore touch points, 266 crore Labdhari beneficiaries, which means on an average, potentially every single family has had 8 benefits of a direct central government scheme. Now, what can you do about that scale? Does that scale mean that you have really wowed the people of India?
Thanks, Rishabh. So, that scale is first of all reflected in today's budget, which is the confidence that you don't have to give anybody sops. I think this is the first, in India's history, this would be the first pre-election budget that has not given sops to people, right? But we also need to look at this from a slightly different point of view. This is not just a lot of schemes for subsistence level people. It's a stratified system of schemes because, in India, we do not provide social security. So there is actually, huge tax benefits even for the middle class when you start investing in things like provident funds and things like that. For the particularly rich people, there are schemes on depreciation if you run a company, if you engage in conspicuous consumption, so that the government gets GST revenue then to plow back here, and you also get a tax benefit up there. So, it's a very multi-tiered, multi-layer approach a very integrated approach, which is bringing benefits to all sections. Now, can we afford to give social security immediately at this point of time? Obviously not. Okay, there is much more required for social security, but in this budget, you will see movement towards that. One of the reasons we don't have more doctors in this country is because the medical council restricts the number of medicine seats in colleges very rigorously. That is now being done away with, announced in this budget, where they're going to have a significant expansion of doctor schemes and things like that. And this is where you will see down the line, you will have the beginnings of social security for people, at least in terms of.
Okay, but Abhijit, on the premise that the 10 flagship, most well-known, actual bona fide schemes, not tax incentives and exemptions and other things, just bona fide, this is government scheme, that there have been 266 crore beneficiaries, labdharis, okay? So many touch points. So has the person who's got treatment under Ayushman Bharat, or has the person who's got a house, or has the person who's got a nalka or a toilet, have these people by definition then transcended into the politics and have become BJP voters or Modi voters?
Not necessarily, but I don't think that was the point. See, it's increased the catchment area. When you increase the number of contact points, statistically speaking, you're going to have much higher catchment.
Okay, Joyita Basu, has a Narendra Modi and the BJP with him done enough in the proof of the pudding, in the rollout, not in the promises? Have they done enough with these schemes, their implementation, their saturation, their expansion, their funding? Have they done enough to win another term?
Number one, the thing is, nothing is enough, but you see, if you are looking at, say, for example, the multidimensional poverty index that has been brought out by Niti Aayog, and not just that, if you are looking at, there's another multidimensional poverty index that is there, that's the international one, which is kind of was with the United Nations. What we are witnessing is that there is, I think, over 400 million people have been lifted out of poverty. And when you're looking at the multidimensional index that has been brought out by the Niti Aayog, there also we are witnessing certain schemes have really made a difference. Okay, and these, if you go through that particular report, I mean, these are very stringent conditions. I mean, you may have a gas, but if you cannot refill that cylinder, then you again go back into poverty. So as a result of which, now there they are saying programs like, I would say in the particular, the first 2023 report, they were talking about programs like Swachh Bharat, which is basically the thrust was on toilet building, the Ujjwala, and of course to a large extent Mudra, which is everything has been part of the Jan Dhan. Now these are the schemes that were working. This time what has happened, the Poshan Abhiyan has really made a difference, because you see, this is, we are coming out of a COVID situation. This is the post-COVID. So it is food security that is making a difference.
Okay.
So you see, I mean, nothing is enough. But yes, the Labharti segment has been created. And whatever, we may be talking about, of course, while elimination of poverty and all are all very fine goals. But the thing is, unless and until a government is elected, a party is elected back to power, there is no point having all these schemes. So yes, there is a very strong.
If you're a politician, yes, you can have a larger outlook for the country. But if you're a politician, yes, the part of the principle can be, we want to continue this, what we consider good work. So let me get Tehseen back in. Tehseen, now faced with this number, okay, and you can argue that a percentage of it can be flim-flammed away. But faced with an overwhelming number of beneficiaries over the past 7-8 years of just the flagship schemes, how do you counter it as a political force?
If your question to me is how do you counter it, it's very simple. If it's only on the flagship schemes, the BJP will lose. Therefore, the BJP uses multiple tactics to win elections, including breaking away political parties, including the governor not swearing in despite a majority. They bully, they use the media, they use massive tactics. Because the BJP will not win on these flagship schemes. In fact, on these flagship schemes, let me argue the BJP will lose. Joeta spoke about the multidimensional poverty index. The data is completely flawed in that. It's not just flawed. Let's talk on what she spoke about. Food security. It's a very important thing, and I actually respect her for speaking about it. But India is the most malnourished country amongst the world. I'm not talking about hungry country. Just because you're giving people 1,800 calories of carbohydrates does not make you a healthy country. It makes you a hunger-free country, but you're a malnourished country. There is a problem there. Therefore, you have a heart attack pandemic happening in our country. Nobody's talking about that. Are those indicators there in this? It isn't. There's a massive heart attack pandemic. Your viewers know it. There's a massive diabetes pandemic in our country. These data, even if you were to take the data as the government said, they haven't taken the post-COVID data. They've assumed the pre-COVID data in the post-COVID scenario. It's completely flawed, the logic. Let me give you simple examples. In 2017, pre-COVID, about 150 million Indians earned less than $100 a month. Today, that number is $180 million. The government itself says it. Therefore, poverty is actually increased. How does this go with a multidimensional index where they say 24 crore people have been lifted out of poverty? Let's come to the third issue, which Abhijit brought out very articulately. He spoke about the tax regime, which in my opinion is extremely complicated. And they said, look, it creates a ripple effect. I agree with what Abhijit said, except I would have taken Abhijit's point if they would give me the consumption expenditure survey from 2014 to 2022. That is the indicator of getting out of poverty. Okay. They haven't done that.
Okay.
They haven't. So what I'm trying to say, just one line, and then Alan, what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, this country is faced with massive unemployment. Unemployment the kind not seen in the past 45 years. So if your question is just the schemes will help the BJP win, if it's a political question, no. Will BJP win? Yes, it will win, but it's not because of the schemes.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate, Tehseen, at least you attempted to answer the question on merit and not on rhetoric. But are we then suggesting that the vast majority of the government statistics on number of roads built per day, on number of airports that are being begun, the number of houses built, the number of toilets built, that the vast majority are actually flawed, that the Ayushman cards were actually not received and the treatments are not happening? What are we suggesting?
No, I'm not suggesting that. In fact, you compliment the government there. You have to. Why should I say what they've done? Well, you should. In fact, Nitin Gadkari is brilliant. You have to compliment them where they deserve compliments. But as opposition, as somebody who wants this government to lose, I have to pull out applause. Now, when you say that, okay, airports are building up and we've had the highest air travel, I'll tell you, it's 2% of India that travels 80% of the time. That includes privileged people like me. That number hasn't statistically gone up. So we have a massive problem. We have a massive inequality. Let me just give you one statistic to explain that. The gross tax revenues to GDP ratio was about 10.5% during UPA time. It's about 10.8% now in the NDA time. These are government figures, which means with the GST collection coming up that much and the corporate tax relief, and I'm not against corporates, it means the poor are paying a larger burden of tax. It's as simple as that. Therefore, the inequality is increased. Therefore, the unemployment is increased.
Okay.
There is a problem there, and we have to address that problem.
Okay,
but that does not take away from building the toilets or from building the airports.
So I have one more quick follow-up question before I get Tanvi in. So, Tehseen, if then there are issues, and of course, one naive to say that there are no issues and everything is sorted and we can all lock up and go home. If there are issues, where is the plan of action that we are receiving from the principal opposition parties, including the Congress, that, okay, this is what our solution to unemployment is, this is what our solution to abject poverty is, this is how we build better houses, better roads and better airports. The principal plan of action seems to be that the country is in distress, we have to save democracy and there might never be an election, and that's what you need to worry about. We don't need to give you a plan. Why is that?
That's why they will lose the election. If they listen to TP or TP here, the TP square on your show, they will win. I'm honestly telling you, because simply shouting, and I've said this on a podcast with Abhijit, I'll just take 30 seconds before you give it to Tanvi. Imagine two restaurants, Congress and BJP face to face. In the BJP restaurant, you know that Nirmala Sitharaman is a sous chef, Amit Shah is a sous chef, Jaishankar is a sous chef, Nitin Gadkari is a sous chef, Modi is the star chef. In the Congress restaurant, you don't know who's your star chef. You don't know whether he's serving buffet or a la carte. You don't know who your other chefs are. Simply saying at lunchtime the BJP restaurant is bad is not going to attract restaurateurs to your restaurant. You have to place a menu before people and let people make a choice. Now, somebody like me who's anti-BJP, I know the restaurant is bad, but at least tell me what you're serving me. Shouting the BJP restaurant is bad is not going to help. So I agree with what you say. Okay. The Congress must have concrete plans, and that is something that the Congress is not looking at. So that is an unfortunate reality.
Okay, so now let me get Tanvi back onto the premise, since she's not spoken yet. Tanvi, the premise is this, okay? We just looked at the top 10 government schemes, okay? And yeah, statistics can be muddled and they can be overblown. But we have enough anecdotal evidence to suggest that yes, roads are being built. Yes, the airports do exist. Yes, the Vande Bharat trains are actually running. Yes, the houses are being built. Yes, there has been some electric connectivity. And yes, some toilets don't have water, but indeed many do. That's a lot of touch points, a lot of beneficiaries across the country. How does anyone compete with that?
If Prime Minister Modi gets another term, it'll mostly because the opposition is completely incompetent right now and they don't have a roadmap, as Tehseen very rightly said. Opposition is completely busy in doing, I don't know what. They can't even save their own ship right now. But when, the history of this entire Prime Minister Modi's entire tenure will be written, his legacy will be known as an unsuccessful beginner, I'm sorry to say. Yes, these schemes are wonderful, and yes, every government does some incredible work in this, and I cannot take away from what this government is doing. But apart from GST or some other, please give one structural reform that this government has been able to successfully implement. And forget the structural reforms. What about the ideological reforms? I mean, I remember Abhijit ji's tweet, that it's time to Modi hatao and Yogi leke aao, because he was not even happy with the poor no implementation of CAA or no framework for NRC or UCC, etc. So for a government with a brute majority, for a prime minister who enjoys, complete admiration, always has to do a U-turn whenever they come up with any sort of reform. So will just, putting in money.
I have a follow-up question on this. Okay, so you and I have grown up in India, and my beginning years in the 1990s, that every time you did try to do something in this country, no matter where you did it, you needed land. If you wanted to build an airport, you needed land. You wanted to build a Tata Nano factory, you needed land. If you wanted to build a highway, greenfield highway, you needed land. It was the most contentious issue. So I asked this question to Nitin Gadkari when I interviewed him. How are you building greenfield highways and we are not seeing massive agitations of people, farmers who are losing their land? And his answer was, we are paying them a better than market rate, and when the highway gets built, then they are able to convert the land use very easily to build their shopping malls and parking lots and dhabas and other things. So they're more than happy to see the development takes place. Now, are we trying to say that all of this infrastructure equipment has been built without a massive land agitation anywhere in the country, and that is not a structural reform, a structural change?
Speaking of land acquisition, what about the land reform bill that this government wanted to introduce and then they took it back?
Not only the land reforms. We all know what happened with the agricultural reforms. The labor reforms really haven't happened. So yes, you have a lot of criticism. But my question is, you built all the highways, you built all the airports, and you've not seen a massive land agitation. We all know what Mamata Banerjee did in Bengal, okay? That hasn't happened anywhere in the country. Is that not a big ticket achievement?
That's incredible, Rishabh, and we have to congratulate Mr. Gadkari for doing it so amicably. And I stated in the beginning that I cannot take away the good work that this government has done, especially what Mr. Gadkari's ministry has done. But I'm talking about the roadmap. In the last 10 years, a prime minister, a decade back, he promised us privatization. And this is the same, and criticized Manrega. And this is the same government who is investing in Manrega and clearly has no roadmap for privatization.
Okay.
So the words clearly don't match what they wanted to achieve.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So that's why I said an unsuccessful beginner.
Okay. Let me unsuccessful beginner. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Epithets can fly thick and fast. Let me get Abhijit back in. So Abhijit, now when we say man with the plan, great. You and I can be, have great plans. But of course, the proof of the pudding is in the doing. Now, 10 years later, in terms of the promises made in the manifesto lists, in terms of the action plans from Swachh Bharat to toilets that we will feed you, we will house you, has Narendra Modi come a long way, or is he, as Tanvi says, very much just at the beginning and nothing much really has happened in 10 years?
Well, I would disagree with that. A lot has happened in 10 years. Remember, the BJP was also opposed to Aadhaar. And yet they made Aadhaar extraordinarily successful and made it extremely, it's now become UPI combined with Aadhaar. Aadhaar is one of the key identification elements feeding into UPI, has become a globally successful model. I think all the promises are coming true slowly. There is a problem with It's not going to all happen at the same time. I think one of the reasons past governments did not tick is that they tried to do too much all at once. You cannot anger, reforms fundamentally anger status quo. You can't do it all at once. It is happening sequentially. It is happening in a way that is politically feasible. So let's take MNREGA and things like that. Do you know the number of fake accounts, the number of fake ration cards, the number of fake payments, all the drips and leaks in the system that have been fixed? It is insane.
Yeah, the
FM
says 2.7 lakh crore savings.
So it is massive. So, those plugs are being fixed. I think one of the things I've gone from being a Modi skeptic to more or less a Modi believer is because I'm seeing over the last 10 years reasons for my skepticism to evaporate.
Okay.
One of the criticisms of this government is that the coal block privatization, Air India is the crown jewel and it's been privatized.
Okay, all right.
You also need to go back because, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. You need to go back to Narendra Modi's 3 terms as Gujarat chief minister. The first term was kind of neither here nor there. The second, there were significant reforms. The third, there were galloping reforms. I think you've seen the same momentum happen here. The first term, manageable. The second, very significant.
Okay, so in a potential 5th term, if and when it were to come, what will happen again? Proof of the pudding will be in the eating. So no, can we just take a second? Let me quickly get Joyita in, who's been listening patiently. Joyita, so the premise then is that Narendra Modi cannot appear as the head of the BJP before the people and this time tell us that is on hope and aspiration. What I promise I will do. It has to be on the basis of what I've done. And that seems to be the party line. They're calling it Modi guarantee, which means that if I say I'll do it, I do it. And I've shown you proof. Has he shown us proof?
Well, when you are looking at it, you see, of course, the very fact, earlier it was, in the 2019 elections, the slogan, if I remember correctly, was Niyat Theek Hai. His intentions are right. This time it has gone to Modi guarantee. So if the people, you see, ultimately when you're talking about proof of the pudding, it is the people. They are the ones who are having that pudding. They are the ones who are assessing him. If they gave him a majority, a landslide in 2019, and if there is a possibility that he is again going to get a landslide, it is whether the people believe or not, whether he has worked, whether he has delivered, whether he has performed. You see, sitting in a TV studio, we cannot make comments like, frankly, just to give some credit to Mr. Gadkari and not to Mr. Modi. That's basically a political response. You see, and I don't think we are, at least some of us are not here to give a political response.
Okay, so let me ask you then two quick follow-ups, okay? In a practical sense, if all of this has been done or claimed to be done, there are always going to be people who are dislike the man, okay? They just dislike the man, okay? Some would do it because this is a job to dislike him, okay? Those will be the politicians in the oppositions. Others just don't like the man. And on the opposite, then there'll be people who just love the man no matter what he does. That's human nature, it's human emotion. But for a swath of people who are actually applying their minds, are they now better convinced on the concept of vishwas that, okay, we've seen you for 10 years, some grudgingly, some enthusiastically, but well done, good job?
Well, it is not just the schemes. In this case, it is not just the schemes and what he has done for the economy. A whole lot of other things are coming into place over here. Say, for example, removal of Article 370, building of the Ram Mandir. All these, whatever these manifesto points were there, he is seen to be delivering one after the other. And when you are talking about, you see, elections, as Tehseen also said, they are just not decided on schemes.
Fair enough.
There has to be much larger, the whole area has to be. So automatically everything is coming into it, and it is adding to that belief that yes, he can deliver, he has delivered, he will deliver even more. So I think that is what is working on the ground.
Okay, so now let me give Tanvi a chance to interject, then I have a question for both her and Tehseen. Tanvi, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to Abhijit that he spoke about the reforms. The problem with the present government is that they can't take everybody along. They just want to bulldoze everything in the parliament and, just follow our way or go to the highway. And if they continue with this attitude, then I'm sorry, no structural reforms can be implemented. Let's recall what happened during GST, how Mr. Arun Jaitley called everybody together, discussed with everything, and everybody was on board to implement it. That's how reforms take place in a society,
Okay.
especially in a country like India, where we have so many regional parties. That is missing in the government, and as long as they overcome that, they cannot bring up any reform.
Okay. With all due respect to the late great Arun Jaitley, but to think that Arun Jaitley single-handedly brought GST into the country without the supervision of somebody else would be a leap of the imagination, which I'm sure that his memory would not serve right as well. Okay, so Tehseen, let me put a question to you then. Is there room to say that now 10 years later, the worst fears that were told to us about a Narendra Modi, that he will be a totalitarian, Hindu Rashtra, Muslim genocide creating ultra-nationalist, have not been realized? That the concept of discrimination in the schemes, whether they are liked or not on religious grounds, hasn't really happened. We can't think of any cases where Muslims have come and said that this toilet was not built because I'm Muslim. That he has done what he said he would do. Now, you can disagree with what he's done, but he's done what he said he would do.
Yeah, but again, that's a very broad question, Rishabh, with respect to you. And I agree actually with what Joyita said. So there are some issues, for example, 370 Ram Mandir, where he's delivered. But there are massive issues he's failed on completely. So to take Joyita's point forward, I'm not going to only give success to Gadkari ji. If Gadkari is successful, of course Mr. Modi is successful. But equally, if Mr. Modi is responsible for Nal Mein Jal, which is frankly my corporation of Panchayat's job, and Mr. Modi is giving water in my bathroom, then why is Mr. Modi not responsible for what's happening in Manipur? There he abdicates responsibility. So there is a massive problem. Even in the personality of the government, there is a massive problem there. But let's leave those aside. Let's simply speak economics. I don't want to get into 370 and Ram Mandir. That's for another day. Let me just speak on economics. You have the greatest unemployment in the past 40 years. The greatest unemployment. The unemployment is so bad that in a friend's IT company next door to my house, for a single engineer's job, over 20,000 people applied. Not only that, about 2 lakh people are ready to leave this country and go to Israel and are saying they're ready to die because we have no money here. Your Manrega allocation, as Tanvi rightly said, has gone up. You have the record number of job applications Manrega. Manrega is the last thing somebody wants a job on. Your labor force participation is at its lowest in manufacturing. Your labor force participation of women in manufacturing is even lower than our neighboring countries. It's an alarming situation. Your labor force participation in agriculture is highest. Now, they say PM Kisan Yojana. That's going to farmers who have land. What are the landless farmers getting? They've all gone back into agriculture. So we have a severe issue there. We're not speaking about a heart attack pandemic at all. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Okay, fair enough.
There are issues that we can.
So you reasonably raise points, which is appreciable. You reasonably raise points because it would be balderdash to suggest that India is all sorted. And there are many things to get done, and it is reasonable to also say that if you take credit for the good, then take accountability for the poor. So let me leave the last word with Abhijit, with the principal premise where we began this conversation. Abhijit, there is a larger premise, of course, on G20 leadership and India's perception of abroad and how we are handling matters and who we are. Then there is, of course, your Mandir and your Kashmir, and then it comes to all the schemes. All in all, has a Narendra Modi done enough to win an election, or is it reliant, as the other two panelists are suggesting, on the opposition losing the election still?
Emphatically, he's done enough. Because, even keeping the opposition off balance is an act of political sagacity. He could have rubbed them enough to see to it, this is Napoleon's old dictum on the battlefield. Always divide your enemies. Waterloo was not lost because, Napoleon was lacking in military genius. It's because he didn't realize the Prussians were coming onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
You see, that also is an act of political genius. Now, you tell me which government, every victory, every election victory is not just schemes. It is a combination of several things, including leadership style, personality, service delivery, etc. that happens. You tell me one government Nobody is saying Modi is not responsible for Manipur. But tell me one government that goes around trumpeting its failures. Assuming, of course, Manipur is a failure, because right now none of us know what's happening in Manipur. I really want to know, did Nehru start tom-tomming the 1962 China defeat to win the next election after that?
Yeah,
Main China हार गया,
of course,
इसलिए
passed
मेरे
away in
को-
64. Okay, all right. Okay, but the point of the premise is well made. But in short, your answer is he probably has. That yes, he has. Okay, now whether that translates or not, we don't know. That's 2 months later, and people who think they know, of course, then are soothsayers who can probably become prime ministers themselves. So we don't know. But the premise of this conversation was that a scale of things have happened. Now you can say that that's not enough. For sure it's not enough. But is it relative proof of an individual walking the talk or just talking the talk? And I leave that to the judgment of those of you who are watching this telecast. My thanks to Tehseen, to Tanvi, to Joyita and to Abhijit.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.